Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a vodcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm in conversation with a very, very accomplished individual from the US, Mr. Bob Cunningham. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Bob is the president and CEO of the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and he was earlier the executive director of Robert Louis Stevenson School and the Purnell School. Bob, let's talk about the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Tell me about the work you do here.
Sure. So the International Center focuses on really stakeholder engagement between government and industry and professionals who are out there spending their lives and their careers working to protect children from sexual abuse, online sexual exploitation, grooming, from going missing, those kinds of things that are kind of a plague on our societies, right? Society is judged by how we protect our children. And right now we are not doing a great job of it. So the International Center hopes to build capacity around the world for countries to really look at themselves, think about what they're doing to protect children, learn from what other countries are doing, share with other countries what they're doing, and really form a tighter safety net for kids around the world. So that's our goal.
So, for our viewers and listeners, help us understand how big is the problem in the world?
The problem is very big. And one of the particular challenges is that this is not a problem for one country or one state or anything like that. This is truly a global problem. And criminals who engage in child trafficking, who engage in online exploitation of children, they don't respect national borders. So this is a problem that we all need to join together to combat. In 2020, there's a reporting mandate in the United States. So any internet service provider that operates in the United States is mandated by US law to report incidents of online child sexual abuse material to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in the United States. And NCMEC produces a report each year. And in 2020, they found almost 22 million reports of online sexual abuse imagery. And 95% of those reports involve cases that originated outside of the United States. So 95% of that 22 million came from countries around the world other than the actual United States, which is why the International Center is so important. In India, I'll give you an example, almost 2 million of those reports came from India. So 2 million incidents of online child sexual abuse materials in 2020 were reported from India.
These are
so it's a problem.
These are really frightening numbers that you are giving me. 22 million reports, and 2 million of those you said came from India. Wow.
Yeah, and this is only the online sexual abuse materials, right? This doesn't talk about child trafficking. This doesn't talk about missing children. This doesn't talk about abuse that occurs in a home or in a school or in any other setting. This is just the online imagery that we see. I can give you one more example. The UK organization, the Internet Watch Foundation, who's a close partner of ICMEC's, also reports on numbers that they collect, and they found that there were every 3 minutes their technologies detected an image of child sexual abuse material online. So every 3 minutes, every day, they find an image, which is just a stunning number. So this is a global problem, and it's a critical problem.
Amazing. And when you say global, is it focused on some regions of the world, or is it truly in virtually every country in the world?
It's not virtually every country, Ashutosh. It's every country.
Okay.
Every country in the world experiences incidents of online child sexual abuse materials, sexual abuse of children, and the exploitation of children. One of our greatest challenges as an organization is when we go into a country at the request of the country. We never force our way into countries, right? What the world needs is not an NGO from Alexandria, Virginia, coming in and telling them how to protect their children. What they need is a thought partner in finding solutions that work in their homes, in their country, in their states, in their neighborhoods. So that's what we try to do. We try to facilitate, we try to provide technical expertise, we provide technology tools, we provide education, best practices, that sort of stuff. But it's up to the people in the country to actually determine what their needs are and to find solutions that will work there. We just help. But every country we go into has the potential to make a difference. And the frustrating thing for us is sometimes we go to a place and they say, this is not a problem in our country. I actually heard that from a high level official in India, where we were talking to them and they said, well, this isn't really a problem here in India. It's a problem that comes from Bangladesh or comes from other places. And India is just reacting. That's not true. Right? This is a problem that originates in Bangladesh. It originates in India. It originates in Alexandria, Virginia. It originates here in my little town in Connecticut. It is a global problem, and it's a problem for everyone.
Well said. Well said. So, you also mentioned that there are a lot of unreported cases. My question to you is that for such a big, if I can use the word pandemic, when it comes to children, what recourse do parents have?
So parents can do a lot. They're always a child's best advocate. They're always the people who see things first. And the more educated they are, the more aware they are, the better they can help their children and their friends' children and their neighbors' children and everybody else. And one of the things that we try to do is provide a lot of information on how to help kids use the internet safely. That's a very important thing. We work with a lot of the social media companies in the world. And one of the things we know is that a parent's first reaction is often to block a contact if they think that there's something strange going on or somebody might be doing something inappropriate with their child. We want them to block the contact, but first we want them to report the issue to the company. Because if they make that report to Snapchat or to Facebook or to Twitter, then that company investigates that incident and can help authorities track down the person who's behaving badly, right? The perpetrator. If they just block the contact, then the company never knows about it and can't help. So that's a simple example of something that most parents do in not the best way out of instinct. So education for parents is really important.
Correct. And, I know I've been reading a lot about some of the legal enactments that are happening in India. And a whole lot of, and other countries are also wanting to do this. What can be done to train children to fight back?
Yeah, so working with kids directly is not something that ICMEC does, but we have so many great partner organizations that do. And what we learn from them is that kids can have agency in this. They can act on their own behalf and on behalf of their friends to protect. And again, it comes down to education. This is why we work closely with schools around the world, is to say to teachers, hey, here is how you can talk to kids. Here's how you can talk to families about how to keep themselves safe or how to keep your kids safe or your students safe. And what we really want kids to know is that they know who they can trust as adults. And if you suspect that you are in danger or that somebody is taking advantage of you in some way, or that your friend is in danger or taking advantage of them in some way, you have to talk. You have to go to an adult and you have to say, I need your help.
Right.
Adults want to help children. This is a hard topic to talk about.
Yeah.
Sexual exploitation and abuse
Mm.
is a hard topic to talk about. Kids going missing, either running away or being abducted, is a hard thing to talk about. And parents often blame themselves first, even if the parent is doing nothing wrong, even if it's not abuse that's occurring in their home or by them. They blame themselves, and that creates a stigma, right? So parents don't want to be seen as bad parents.
Correct.
Parents don't want to be seen as not protecting their child. So they're afraid to talk about it. Kids are the same way. They don't want people to think that they did something wrong. They don't want people to think that they're ashamed of this or they're afraid of this. So as caring adults, we have to give them the space to do that. We have to let them know that no matter what they tell us, we're going to be on their side. We're going to support them.
Very
Right?
well.
That's the most important thing.
Very well said. And I was talking to another guest who runs an NGO a few months ago on a similar topic. And one of the things that she told me was that the first level of resistance when a child comes to tell about an exploitation that may have taken place is the parents themselves, because they're in a state of denial. And they said,
That's right.
they also said that, I think if I remember the statistics, 1 in 3 children have had some form of abuse at home.
Well, when you look at those, even just look at those statistics that I gave you, that makes sense, right? I'm not sure where that particular number comes from, but that would not surprise me. This is a truly global issue, and it's a massive issue. And the thing that makes it different is, look, when we talk about disease and we talk about natural disasters and we all want to be involved and help and provide relief, right? Those are very different, because what we're talking about here with child exploitation is something that people do to other people, right? And if people do these things to children, then people can stop, right? Or other people can stop them. So this is a human challenge, and it needs to be addressed by humanity, right?
And you also mentioned that you do a lot of work with governments. And you mentioned that when you were in India, the government was in a state of denial. What, according to you, should the role of governments be across the whole world to prevent this kind of abuse for our future generations?
Governments have to create the context for good people to be able to protect children, right? So they have to pass laws that first and foremost protect children, provide consequences for people who abuse children or exploit children. They have to protect the victim, right? Laws have to protect the child who's the victim. They have to protect the person who reports that abuse, right? People who want to help children have to be safe in helping children, and governments have that responsibility. When we worked, that example I gave you in India was just one person. There are many people in the Indian government who care very deeply about children and who recognize it as a problem in India. We work very closely with the law enforcement professionals in the state of Kerala, and we helped them develop a specialized unit to combat online crimes against children. And Manoj Abraham is the commander there, the commander of that unit. And he's a hero. He is a true champion for India's children. His team are true champions. They solve thousands of cases each year now because of this unit. And that's an example of a person being a champion and convincing his superiors and his government to create this unit, working with an organization like ours. And that took courage, because he had to go to his superiors and to his public officials and say, this is a problem here in Kerala. This isn't a problem of other people. This is our challenge. It's our problem. And that's what we try to do. We try to identify those champions within governments and we try to support them to pass the laws, create the police units, build the communication between the courts and child protective services and schools and hospitals. It's all about how we share information and how we act on information.
Well said. So one more question, which is then that relates to handling the trauma these children go through. What is your center also working with NGOs to handle trauma for children?
We do work with NGOs who manage trauma with children. And it is important to remember that these incidents are traumatizing to children and to families to a large extent, but specifically to the victims, to the children. We know how much sexual abuse, sexual exploitation as a child, and how much going missing for any reason affects you throughout your life. There are psychological implications, there are emotional implications, there are implications for education and employment down the road. There are implications for your ability to create good relationships with a partner or a spouse, to have good relationships with your own children. You know, it's a wide-reaching effect. So that whole continuum of care is so very important. And do you know where it starts? It starts with the first responder, the police officer who's investigating, the social worker, the teacher who discovers this kind of abuse. And so one of the things we try very hard to do is provide those first responders with the protocols they need to talk effectively with a child, to interview a child effectively, to connect that family and that child with those NGOs and those local organizations that provide victim services. Those are the things that are so important in our work, and they're such a big challenge.
Amazing. So one more question relating to ICMEC, and then I move to the next segment.
Sure.
One of the other things that I was reading about while I was preparing to have my conversation with you is that there are very serious issues in communities. You know, the village elders or the community leaders, they find it very, very difficult to accept something like this. What has been your experience?
They do. A lot of communities definitely find it hard to accept that this is a problem within their communities. Again, it's something that people don't like to acknowledge, don't like to talk about. So a lot of the times we will find, you mentioned that blaming the family is often one of the first things that happen. Or you mentioned that parents are ashamed and embarrassed, so they don't want to go and report. I think that's very accurate. The other thing that happens is that people assume a child is making things up, right? That they were angry for some reason.
So we were talking about the community, Bob, and you were saying that there is normally a lot of resistance.
There is. Nobody wants to acknowledge that your neighbor or your colleague or your friend is abusing a child or exploiting a child, right? But we know it's happening because those images we talked about earlier, those 22 million images that are out there, think of those as a record of abuse, right? Those are a record of somebody abusing a child or causing trauma to that child. So we know that this is going on. We know it's going on in your town. We know it's going on in my town. And those are the kinds of conversations we have with community leaders. We can actually use our partner organizations who track where the online exploitation is happening in real time. So I can show a graphic that says right now, as you and I are talking, here's how many images of child sexual abuse material are online in your area. And you see all the red lights light up, and then people can't argue. Then they have to say, okay, this is a problem in my town, in my neighborhood. And that's motivating.
Very well said. So Bob, I'm now going to move to the next segment. Our guests love to get to know our viewers and listeners love to get to know our guest a little better. So I have time for a couple of maybe 2 or 3 questions for you personally. My first question to you, I mean, you've spent time, earlier before ICMEC with other organizations. My question to you would be, what would you say are three key milestones or pivot points in your life?
That's a great question. There are a lot of turning points in my life and milestones. I've obviously been very fortunate to have the
Mhm.
opportunities that I have. It started in my first job. My first job was a real turning point in my life. I went from a small town in Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
which is in the sort of mid-Atlantic region of the United States.
Mhm.
And I left there and went to southern Texas, to the Texas-Mexican border, for
Mhm.
my first teaching job as a history teacher. And my students were the children of migrant farmers.
Okay.
And that was a whole world that I did not know, that I wasn't aware of. But it showed me how important education really was to those children and to those families, and how education can be a path to opportunity,
Mhm.
but also how you need people who have the influence and have the ability, who can do that, who can leave Pennsylvania, go to Southern Texas, be a resource for the kids there, show them that there are different possibilities in life, the
Mhm.
same way they were showing me that there are different possibilities in life. And that's what created the passion for helping kids, helping families,
Mm.
being a resource to kids and families.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so that was the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing that happened for me is I decided to go to graduate school.
Mhm.
And I decided to go to graduate school at Columbia University in New York City, at
Mhm.
Teachers College, to become a specialist in the field of education, to work on behalf of kids who learn and think differently, kids with learning disabilities, dyslexia, ADHD,
Mhm.
those kinds of things, and how to help their families. And what I learned at Columbia was the value of real expertise,
Mhm.
how to develop deep understanding, how to think deeply and broadly about issues that families and children face, and how to become an expert in this area. And that was a turning point for me, because I had never seen myself as particularly smart or particularly capable, or as a real expert in anything.
Mhm.
So that was a change for me. Uh, I went on to become the headmaster and principal at several great schools. I learned a lot there. But then the third turning point for me was an opportunity to work with an organization in New York City called the Poses Family Foundation, a wonderful family who
Mhm.
had done quite well for themselves and decided to give back.
Wow.
And I went and joined their team, and I helped to create an organization called understood.org. I was one of the first team members at Understood, which
Mhm.
is a social impact organization that helps children and individuals with learning and thinking differences. And what that taught me was that expertise alone was not enough. I was proud of myself for being an expert, for having deep knowledge.
Mm.
That wasn't enough. I had to be able to use that expertise to have an immediate impact on children and families. How do I take what I know deeply and what I am passionate about and communicate it effectively? Break it down so that someone without that level of knowledge can understand it and use it to improve their lives. And that's what's carried me forward to places like ICMEC and
Fasc-
hopefully whatever I do
Fascinating.
next.
Fascinating. So I have time for one more question. I was trying to decide what to ask you, but I'm now going to ask you the question. Given the kind of work that you're doing with children and giving back so much, who or what inspires you?
So obviously kids inspire me,
Mhm.
right? Because it presents human potential like a child,
Correct.
right? That every opportunity could be theirs. We know that not all kids are going to have all opportunities, but all kids will have some opportunities. And what they make of those opportunities is one of the most fascinating things about life to me.
Mm.
Fascinating things about life. So that's one. Um, People, aside from children, people who are creative and have particular talents inspire me. I don't. I'm not a talented person. I'm not a particularly creative person. I have no artistic ability. I have no musical ability, none of that. So people who can experience life that way and express themselves through those creative avenues are a genuine source of inspiration for me. I like people who are different from me. I like people who look at the world differently and who think differently. And I think I am better at what I do, and I am happier with who I am because of that.
Amazing. Bob, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and honor speaking to you. Thank you for taking me down this amazing journey of what you are doing to protect the children of the world. Thank you again and good luck.
I'm a small part of it, Ashutosh. Thank you for shining a spotlight on the work. It's so important to us.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.